get started here. The Committee on Family, Seniors, and Health is called to order. Secretary, take the roll.
Senator Carter.
Here.
Senator Nicola. Senator Hudson.
Here.
Senator Lewis. Senator Moon. Senator Nirenberg.
Establishing a quorum, we will begin with Mike. Oh, Senator Schnelting is here, so we will go ahead and start with Senate Bill 33. Senator, begin when you're ready. Oh, it is an SJR. Thank you. We knew that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Adam Schnelting, representing Eastern St. Charles County. Here to present SJR33. SJR33, if approved by the voters, would bring a necessary clarification to state law regarding the language of Amendment 3. The measure proposes a constitutional amendment, so it has to be passed by the voters in order to become law. But if approved by the voters, it would reaffirm a woman's right to health care for miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies, and medical emergencies. It would prohibit transgender surgeries from being performed on kids, minors only. It would prohibit taxpayer-funded abortions, and if approved by the voters, it would also limit abortions to rape, incest, and medical emergencies. Roughly $30 million of out-of-state money was spent for the passage of Amendment 3 this last year. Missourians were faced with a false dichotomy. They were told that if they didn't pass Amendment 3, women would be dying in our hospitals from an inability to obtain the care that they need for ectopic pregnancies, miscarriage care, and medical emergencies. And while that was a compelling argument for many of the folks who love their daughters and their wives, it was also an argument that simply was false and misleading. The intent of the, but it was a compelling argument. It was a compelling argument, enough that some Missourians who were otherwise pro-life even voted for it. The intent of the SJR is to present the voters with a with another choice that I believe is more in keeping with their values. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions, Madam Chair, so I want to keep it brief, and I want to make sure that folks here today can testify on both of these bills that are going to be presented. So I'm just going to open up for any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions, Senator? Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
So you believe that some people voted for Amendment 3 because it was, as you say, a compelling argument. Do you know the percentage of your district that voted for Amendment 3?
It passed in my district. I don't know the exact number, but it passed, yes.
Yes, it passed by 56.92%.
That sounds about right.
You said people thought it was a compelling argument, but that it was deceptive?
So what I said was the depiction that if we didn't pass Amendment, the depiction that was made that if we didn't pass Amendment 3, women would be dying in our hospitals from an inability to receive care, medical care. That was misleading. Yes.
Okay. Senator, are you aware that the court wrote a ballot summary that was found to be fair, just, impartial, and that is what was presented to the voters along with the one-page complete text of the
amendment itself? Yeah, so the depiction was not made in the text itself. Many people could not access the text. Many people didn't realize that you can just go to the SOS's website and look that text up, so they would see the ballot summary, which obviously
Senator,
is
I believe they did.
Short.
I mean, this is something that for a long time we have had this process in place. Nearly 100 years we've had the initiative petition process in place, and folks are very well aware that what we see on the ballot is, depending if it's a resolution or initiative petition, it's a 50 or 100 word summary, and voters are smart. They know how to go and reference the entire language that they are voting on. I heard on the constitutional amendment to legalize marijuana, for example, that folks perused 30 plus pages of text to understand what they were voting on. And Senator, this was one page. It was one page.
Yeah,
So
there's.
are you telling me that voters are stupid?
No, they would be putting words in my mouth to suggest that. What I'm telling you is that many voters didn't actually look at the actual text on the Secretary of State's website. And what I'm telling you is that the depiction made both in commercials and in many other advertisements for the amendment is what was misleading. I wasn't even
Okay, so
referencing the ballot
The
language.
depiction. Okay. Senator, did you happen to tune in was it a week or 2 weeks ago? Time's a little bit blurry, but did you happen to tune into the House companion version of this bill?
I did.
Okay. Were folks there to testify in support and opposition?
Yes.
Okay. So I had the opportunity to tune in, and I heard from, I believe, over 100 plus people who drove in from across the state. It, obviously, as the House hearings do, they went late into the night. But folks wanted to stay to prove to the General Assembly that the people of Missouri are serious when it comes to decisions about very difficult personal medical decisions, that they want to ensure that politicians are kept out of that. Were you able to listen to the full hearing and to the testimony for and against? Were you able to listen to it?
Yes, I
Okay.
was.
Okay.
Yeah, what I have found in speaking with, and I just came off of that campaign trail. I knocked at about 40,000 doors in my
Well,
district,
we have
and
that
many of the
in
folks
common,
that
obviously.
right, yeah, and many of the folks that I spoke with, even some of the folks who were otherwise pro-life or otherwise mostly pro-life, were concerned that women were in fact dying in our hospitals, and that just simply wasn't the case.
Well, and we can certainly find some testimony, but I do think that many women, including somebody myself who's of childbearing age, who's had very, very complicated pregnancies, who's somebody who has experienced some of the most heart-wrenching things that could ever happen to you, even from desired pregnancies, and feeling that I didn't have access to care. So this is real, Senator.
Yeah, nobody's suggesting it's not.
But Senator, what you said is that you feel that what was depicted isn't happening, and it has been, Senator, for so long. This General Assembly went way too far when it came to restricting Missourians of medical care, period. And that's what this initiative petition was about. That was the momentum we saw from across the state. And so it's so frustrating to me that here we are spending very valuable time in the General Assembly to undo the will of the voters.
Well, we're not undoing the will of voters. Only the voters can undo their own will. This is a constitutional proposition, so it goes to the voters, and they would have to approve it. If this is in fact, if you are in fact right, that the voters view this in a different light than what I have depicted, then the voters will decide that at the ballot box. But with the voters that I have been speaking with, many of the folks who even did vote yes later regretted their vote when the fog of war, so to speak, subsided and the $30 million or so of TV commercials were over. Many of them realized, you know what, maybe I was misled on that. So
Well, Senator,
this just simply gives the voters another chance to take a look at it,
And-
something that may be more in line with their values.
And I understand that there's plenty of people to weigh in on this issue on both sides. We've heard that for decades, quite frankly. But I just want to end with the following, and you're more than welcome to respond, obviously. I had some time just to look at your particular Senate district, and actually all the Senate districts. In your Senate district, your voters voted yes on 3 by a margin of 56.92%. In Senator Nicola's district, it was 56%. Senator Lewis, 79%. In my district, it was 64%. And Senator Carter's, Hudson, and Senator Moon's, those are districts where voters did not pass Amendment 3. But what I found interesting about your district, Senator, is that nearly the exact same margin voted for you and for Amendment 3. So what that tells me, Senator, is there are folks that voted for you and then voted yes on 3. And I've trust voters. I trust voters to understand the process, to recognize perhaps they're with you on other issues, whether it comes to taxation. I think a lot of people were voting with the economy in mind when they went to the ballot box. But they also voted to restore personal medical freedom. And we are going to make abundantly clear this legislative session that our line is Amendment 3. Our line is Amendment 3, and that is a hard line in the sand, Senator. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your passion. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Any other questions? Senator, go ahead.
Good morning, Senator.
Morning.
I just kind of want to piggyback on that and then go into a little bit of the SJR language. Do you think the voter in Senator Carter's district, by rejecting Amendment 3 by 64%, are smarter than the voters in your district?
I don't think this is an issue of
Or not
what
misled?
folks in. I don't think this is an issue of folks in one district or another are smarter than the other. I think it just boils down to when you have $30 million or so to pump commercials out into certain districts in certain areas. Obviously, they targeted certain areas of the state. And if those depictions made in those advertisements are misleading or false, I think that's going to affect the vote naturally.
Do you know the amount of money that was pumped into the reject Amendment 3?
Yes, roughly. It was around $3 million.
Right, to look into that, because I remember looking at things and it was quite a bit on
Yeah,
both
they were
sides.
they were outspent about 10 to 1,
So
roughly.
do you trust physicians and healthcare professionals?
Sometimes.
Sometimes?
Yeah. I mean, look, if you go back to there was a time in our country when the American Medical Association, as an example, put ads for cigarettes all over their advertisements. Doctors were advertising for it. I mean, I don't put I put a healthy dose of trust in our medical professionals, but that doesn't mean that just whatever they say I'm going to take without a grain of salt.
Right, and I can appreciate that, because I think healthcare is fluid and it's ever evolving, and there was a time where, they didn't think cigarette smoking was bad, and, and anyway, but, from the medical community and from women experiencing ectopic pregnancies, complications with pregnancies, these are real stories. It's not misled. It's actual stories, and I think that's, what was compelling to several people. But just really quick, do you, and you talk about people being misled. I serve on I'm not sure if you do, the Government Efficiency Committee, and there are like hundreds and hundreds we get all the information from the portal from people across the state who are disappointed with us undoing the will of the voter, focusing on undoing Amendment 3 when it just passed, and don't believe it's a very efficient form of government, and quite frankly, a waste of taxpayer dollars. So when I look at this SJR, I just have a couple questions. On the ballot summary, page 3, line 8, I guess. Shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to guarantee the right to reproductive freedom, which shall include women's right to health care for miscarriages, ectopic pregnancy, and medical emergencies? You say guarantee the right to reproductive freedom. Can you explain that definition?
Yeah, so right now the Amendment 3, there really is no definition except what is found in Amendment 3. Reproductive freedom is kind of a fluid term. Some people or some organizations think it includes certain things, others disagree. So it's kind of one of those things where we just have to look at the text of Amendment 3. I wish I had actually Amendment 3 directly in front of me, but it essentially lays it out in Amendment 3, how it's kind of defined, what that includes.
Okay, because to me, we've often talked about ballot candy, and by having that, the very first bullet sounds a little bit like ballot candy to me. And
Well,
then-
this doesn't repeal. This underlying bill here is actually clarification language, so it's actually essentially embedded into Amendment 3, if that makes sense to you.
Okay, and then page 2, subsection 4, line 26, can you explain to me what this is doing?
So this is essentially reaffirming that women have the right for medical malpractice. So if someone, so there were concerns with language in Amendment 3 that would harm the ability of a patient to sue for a botched procedure or a botched abortion. And this is essentially shoring up that right to ensure that they still have that right.
Okay. To me, it reads, I read that it is a total ban on abortion without any exceptions, because it's, I fear for our healthcare providers acting in good faith. But anyway, just wanted to point that up, concern in that part. But that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Any other questions for the senator? Senator Moon?
Forgive me for being short-winded. I'm old and out of shape. I woke early this morning, earlier than normal, and I had a heavy heart. I have to say I had no animosity toward any of you here, whatever side you're on. I can't say I totally understand your position. However, I just can't. I can't fathom how we as a civil society can just, because someone's out of sight and out of mind, take a position that they're not valuable. And I can't argue from a woman's standpoint the horrific trauma of an act that is just unconscionable to me. We often are known on both sides of the aisle for saying if it just saves one child, we should do it, especially from the educational standpoint. But we are talking about a situation that is not even going to allow an individual to be educated. And why? There may be numerous reasons, and I'm not going to try to enumerate each one. But in the United States, there are certain offenses that you can commit, be charged, and ultimately, if you're convicted, be sentenced to death. I just made a list of a few. Murder. And I should say, is this not what we might be doing? Treason, espionage, kidnapping resulting in death, hostage taking if it results in death, drug trafficking, attempted murder of a witness, a juror, or a court officer, murder of a government official. And with this resolution, we are saying, if it's approved, that if a report is made, this developing child can be murdered. Because that's what it is. If we believe that at conception a life begins and a new DNA strand is developed and created to identify a unique individual, has both the mom's and the dad's DNA together, but they're unique. They're not the mother or the father. They are their own individual. So with this in mind, if a report is filed, should we not be able to hire a professional to kill the rapist? Is there any difference in that? Of course, we wouldn't approve that. But because this child is unseen, has not even had a chance to grab the mom or the dad's finger And if you're a parent and you've experienced that, there is no way in the world that we can, with good conscience in a civil society, just say, they don't matter. I want so badly to support your effort. We've had conversations, and I appreciate your candor and your heart's desire to do what you think is right. I can't, in good conscience, do this. We talked about Amendment 3. Overall, it passed by maybe 1.5%, a little bit more, I think. And we are, at least on my side of the aisle, using an argument that we can't mount an effort to turn back the tide. I know some in this room, all around us here, worked extremely hard to educate the voters, and we failed. Why? There are various reasons. Some have been mentioned already. I believe that we probably were too late, did too little, and I wonder, for those of you who are here, I'm grateful that you're wanting to be involved, that you're present, and I know many of you who spent your own time and money to do what you think was right. How many aren't here? How many didn't even give a second thought to those we call followers of Jesus Christ, who didn't even care to talk to their churches, who didn't care to talk to their neighbors, who just hoped that we would get a new president and he would be our savior? Now, I like Donald Trump, but he's not our savior. And if we think because we elected a new president that all our troubles are over, you better start thinking again. So, why are we so quick to concede? We should mount an army. And yes, I'm telling my plans to those who will oppose us. But I don't dislike you. I don't hate you. I think we have a friendly relationship. This is going to divide us, though. On that political aisle, it's going to divide us severely. I'm hoping that we will be able to at least offer an amendment to this bill to have a severability clause, so that if it's challenged, and I believe it will be, at least we'll have something that we've gained. Some of you know I grew up in Virginia, about 20 minutes from the ocean. I like the ocean. But now I'm a Missourian, and I love Missouri. And I cannot, with good conscience, allow any killing on innocent human life who have not had an opportunity to speak for themselves, and you know they can't. While on the beach, there was a kid way far off. At times of the year, we'll have things wash ashore. And this kid was picking up starfish, throwing them. There were hundreds of them out there, throwing them back in the water. And he was asked, "What are you doing, son?" He said, "Saving the starfish." The old fella told him, "You're not going to save them all." The kid didn't listen to him, and he picked up another one and threw it back in the water. And he said it made a difference to that one. How can we, I'll end here, how can we not care? And I'm not saying we don't care, but there are kids who are going to die. And if we don't think they're kids, well, look at the science. The science says they are human beings. We should kill ourselves first, probably, and I probably shouldn't have said that. That's going to go viral, and there's going to be something else said about me. But we are breathing. We are able to make conscious decisions, and these kids cannot and will not be able to if we continue down the path that we're doing and not try to save them all. Senator, I value our friendship, and I hope that what I've said doesn't damage that. And I know your heart is in the right place, but, and again, with our conversations, I want it all. And I know some say that's not possible, and I'm quitting. Please pray about this. Those who know the Lord, pray. Ask Him for wisdom. He said that if we'll ask, He'll give it to us.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions? I have a couple, if you don't mind, Senator. We talked about the money that was spent in relation to Amendment 3, pro versus against. Do you have any knowledge or information on where that money came from? You
most of
referred
it
to
was-
$30 million.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
That's right, Madam Chair. Yeah, most of it was from out of state. There was a good deal of it. There was like $1 million from Michael Bloomberg, New York City. There was a lot of it came from New York City. There was a group called the
Can
1630
you speak a
Fund.
little clearer into the microphone a little bit better?
Yeah, is that better?
Thanks.
Much of it was from New York City donors. I think there was $1 million from Michael Bloomberg as an example, former mayor of New York City. There was a great deal of money from, excuse me, from the 1636 project. Millions from that particular organization. So there was a lot of out-of-state money, and allegedly, potentially foreign money as well. But I think there's some folks who testify today might be able to touch on that. But certainly, with certainty, there was definitely a lot of out-of-state money.
So how do you feel like the voters of Missouri would feel if they knew that their Constitution was made vulnerable by outside influence and really not the citizens of Missouri?
You know, most people I've talked to kind of really on both sides of the aisle. If you take any issue that people would consider like a social issue or something that's kind of polarizing, if you set that aside, when folks think of a Constitution, they do think that a Constitution is something that should be protected, and that is just something that should be thin. We shouldn't be consistently passing ballot measures that add on dozens and dozens of pages to our Constitution. That's something that should be protected. And most folks that I've talked to, even a lot of Democrats I've talked to and when knocking doors, have felt the same on that.
Thank you. I just want to make a statement here as the chair. You have filed a piece of legislation, as many of us who are legislators know, you file a piece of legislation in hopes to have further dialogue and discussion. That is the purpose of filing legislation. That is the purpose of committees like this, for us to be able to come together to have these discussions that thankfully are made public so the public can weigh in. Certainly, you can see that this is going to be a divisive conversation, but one that needs to be transparent. So I just thank you for being willing to have the discussion. I want to just give thanks to the committee members for their willingness to have this discussion. This is not going to be an easy conversation, but I do appreciate the opportunity that we have to be able to go back to the voters to ask for clarifying language to say, is this the intent and will of the public? As a woman and a mother of 5, one who has special needs, I am very grateful for that opportunity to say, is this truly what you meant? I mean, that is the purpose of this legislation, if I'm not wrong, Senator. Is
That's
that
right.
right?
That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Senator? All right, we're going to start. I'm going to ask that everybody be really civil about all of this. We're going to give testimony in favor, and then we'll rotate to against, if you wouldn't mind just staying there. We'll begin with those in favor. We'll see how it goes. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Just make sure the green button is on.
Okay, hello. Good morning, everybody.
the Honorable Chairperson Carter, Vice Chairman Nicola, and our committee members. I am a board-certified family physician specialist with almost 30 years of clinical experience. I'm a wife, mother of 4 young adult children, a new grandmother, delivered a month ago after the first snowstorm, and a naturalized citizen of Missouri. I've also experienced miscarriages and have experienced the sadness of losing twins during a chickenpox exposure. So as I was taking care of elders who had shingles. One of the many joys of being a family physician is the privilege of caring for each member of the family from womb to tomb. I'm here in support and to testify in support of SJ33 on behalf of the Family Medicine section of the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs. This legislation incorporates reasonable language for all the care pregnant women and their child in the womb would need. Prohibiting abortion will not limit physicians from providing care that supports human flourishing. In fact, in a 2020 survey of recently graduated family medicine physician residents, greater than 97% of them do not provide elective abortions. That tells you that most physicians do still value that life. We value both mom and child growing in the womb. Like many of your personal physicians, I became a physician to help and not harm those entrusted in my care, especially the most vulnerable. This legislation affirms the government's role to value both the mother and the child's constitutional right to life. Thank you for your attention. I welcome your questions.
Congratulations on being a grandmother. As
Thank
a grandmother
you.
of 2, it's the best.
Well, yeah, I know. This is the first one, so this one's very spoiled already.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Make sure you leave your witness form there on the table. Is that your testimony or a witness form?
Testimony.
Okay, can you make sure she gets a witness form?
Oh, I already turned in a
Okay,
witness
great.
form as well.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. Anyone here to testify in opposition of the bill? All right, you're up. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you. To the chair and the honorable members of the committee, I am here to testify in opposition to SJR 33.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you could just speak into the microphone. It would
Sorry
be-
about that.
No worries.
My name is Diane Light. I am a physician. Abortion is a medical treatment, not a political football, nor a religious dictum. Abortion refers to the termination of a pregnancy, viable or not. The point at which a non-viable pregnancy threatens the pregnant individual's life is not easily defined. The decision regarding an abortion should be between the healthcare provider and their patient. Requiring law enforcement involvement for rape and incest further traumatizes the victims of such crimes. Reporting rape and incest is a complex process through which many victims bear the shame of a crime imposed upon them through no fault of their own. In the case of incest, the one who should be protecting them is the perpetrator. 12 weeks can pass before the victim has the opportunity or the courage to report the crime against them. Placing physicians in the position to verify whether or not a police report has been filed, whether or not it was filed in the proper jurisdiction, is beyond the scope of their duties. The restriction of public health care funds is discriminatory against people who lack the monetary means to obtain health care outside of their publicly funded health care. Gender dysphoria is a clinical diagnosis as stated in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. As such, the treatment of gender dysphoria should be between the healthcare provider and the individual. In the case of a minor, as with all healthcare, the parents would also be involved. Again, restricting public healthcare funds for a recognized clinical disorder is discriminatory against people who lack the monetary means to obtain health care outside of their publicly funded health care. Remedies for negligently causing damages during the course of treatment already exist through medical professional liability. No other situation exists in medical professional liability for revocation of a medical license performing safely without complication a medical procedure. Medical research and recommendations have evolved to protect against false recommendations, as stated by the senator earlier about the promotion of cigarettes in the 1940s. Medicine has adopted a policy of basing their decisions on evidence-based medicine, which requires rigorous study and evaluation before recommendations are given by physicians at this time. Be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for this witness?
Thank you for being here, Doctor. I appreciate you highlighting some of the concerns about putting in what seems to be more or less an arbitrary 12 weeks to report exemption in the bill. So one of the things that I've been struggling with is what additional burden this body would place on somebody who has been a victim of one of the most heinous crimes that can be committed against a person. And all the data and research we have about sexual violence, I think it's very clear that victims often delay reporting or never report because it is so difficult to relive that trauma. I appreciate you bringing this to our forefront, or to the forefront of the conversation as we continue discussing this resolution, that your perspective as a medical provider would put you in a very difficult position to help me out with the piece that you spoke about, physicians having to verify or work through a police report. Can you speak to that part again about any challenges that would present to you?
My understanding is that in order for an individual who has been the victim of rape or incest, that they would have to prove that they filed a police report in order to receive an abortion. And I don't think that I'm not a lawyer, I'm a physician, but I do know that jurisdiction matters, and that is a part of the statement in the summary of the bill that I read, that a physician would not have the means by which to easily identify if proper jurisdiction had been obtained by the individual who was seeking relief.
Okay, thank you for adding some information there. So again, I'm trying to process how this would actually work if it were implemented. And again, what we would be forcing somebody who's been a victim of rape or incest to go file a police report. You know, I've had to file police reports on many things, and it is one of, for somebody who hasn't been a victim of a traumatic crime, even of, I had a house that was burglarized. That is a very difficult process to go through. I mean, I remember being shooken up. I tried to get all my facts straight, and here I wasn't the victim of a violent crime. It was property theft, and I could hardly do this as somebody who had all the time and means in the world to go through that process, and in what I was put through in filing that report. This is what we are forcing people who have been victimized, assaulted, to go file a police report because they don't want to live out their life as a victim of this crime. I mean, I'm very frustrated that I guess this is the solution from the other side. They've heard a lot of pushback that there were no exceptions. So this is a ill thought out proposal of trying to create some exceptions. And I just want to say I appreciate you bringing your knowledge to the forefront of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Senator?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I just want to kind of add, I think that there's definitely some bipartisan support to support victims of sexual assault. I've seen that, in both sides. And I know you're a physician, so you're not following everything that's happening in this building. But just want to point out that, just recently in the House, they adopted extending the statute of limitation for crimes against sexual abuse because they know that it's the most underreported case. And as we are showing empathy to victims of sexual assault, while we're on one hand extending the statute of limitation in a different bill, however, this forcing them to, in the wakes of the trauma of their experience, forcing them to report this, and then physicians fact-checking and verifying. It just seems we're not wholeheartedly considering what that is like for victims of sexual assault.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? I just have maybe a comment. We have deliberated in this committee. A few weeks ago, we were deliberating healthcare providers being able to do forensic exams on children so that they might be able to prosecute those who have molested them or raped them. So I just want to make that note that that is fact-checking and verifying on children that they have been raped and have been basically victims of molestation and things like that. So it's ironic to me that we're talking about women, adults, having that same process, so that if they are potentially being sex trafficked and compelled to have an abortion beyond, outside of their own wishes, that's absurd. But yet we are talking about fact checking and verifying 3-year-olds going in and having a similar forensic exam. So I just want to make that note. Anyway, thank you for your testimony. Please.
May I make a couple more comments?
Sure.
Yes, I appreciate that position. I also want to say that if we need to have trained professionals who know how to do proper sexual assault examinations on all ages, because sadly, sexual assault does occur in all ages, all age groups, both the very young, unbelievably so, and the very old, again, unbelievably so. So yes, but I don't see that as an argument against or an explanation why someone would have to receive have a police report before they receive an abortion. I think
you are talking about ending another life, right? And so, in the cases where these women, statistically, women are having, I guess it depends on what report you read, but there are cases where women are having abortions, are being compelled to have abortions. So in the cases of rape and incest, oftentimes, you can even deliberate those statistics, how often those women are feeling compelled to do so. Aren't they worthy of having a check in place to be able to say, is this something that you want to do? Who is a perpetrator against you that may have done this to you? We, like I said, it's just so ironic to me that we have these conversations about protecting young people, and then, again, we're not talking about the life of the unborn child who has done nothing. So if we're willing to put a 3-year-old through a forensic examination, then shouldn't there be some kind, and this is an honest question, shouldn't there not be some kind of metric to ensure that those women who are going to go have an abortion are having an opportunity to meet the person who has perpetrated this crime against them, have their day in court? Shouldn't they, if they are being compelled, again, to have an abortion, they should be able to have a check in place that says, I have an opportunity to say, yes, this is happening. This is the person who did it. And this is silently happening in the shadows of our communities as well. So
I am not suggesting that somebody should not have the opportunity to create a police report and have their day in court. I fully support that. What I am saying that it is a traumatic event, and that some women who are raped or are the victims of incest do not have the means or the mental state of mind before 12 weeks to make that. Yes, I do think people should, it should be much safer for someone to report that crime and to have a proper exam and proper treatment as a consequence of that crime. Absolutely, I believe that. I do not believe it should be a mandate prior to having an abortion. And on the same subject, I don't believe that anyone should be forced to have an abortion in the same way that I don't believe that anyone should be forced to carry a pregnancy.
Well, maybe, so this is part of the conversations, right? How do we mitigate all of the concerns involved? So
I don't
anyway,
think there is a perfect answer, right? I don't think there is a perfect answer to all of this. But what I do think is that women should be trusted with their health care provider to make the right decision for them. Because whatever decision they make at that time will be the decision for the rest of their life. And I think that it is extremely important.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next in favor. Begin when you're ready.
My name is Rabbi Zevis Mason. I'm a resident of St. Louis, Missouri, and I serve as the chairman of the Coalition for Jewish Values, Missouri, as well as Midwest Regional Vice President of the national organization. And I represent over 2,500 Orthodox rabbis in matters of Jewish and biblical values and ethics and matters in public policy. And the matter is very personal to me as well, as I've been blessed with 9 children and 17 grandchildren. I'm here on behalf of my above-stated constituency, together with hundreds of thousands of Jews, to advocate for what arguably are the most vulnerable in our society, and those are our unborn children. And I believe that the Senator's bill, SJR33, does that. When we look at the Jewish biblical stance on abortion, drawing upon what I refer to as the Jewish Bible, or Torah, or what you might refer to as the Old Testament, that Bible clearly expresses the grandeur and the significance of the life that's growing inside a mother-to-be. And the divine gift of a soul was given to a mother-to-be when it was conceived within her. And although the popular joke goes that a Jewish unborn child is only considered viable when it goes through medical school, the truth is that Judaism has always believed that life begins at conception, that the soul, that all-knowing, all-feeling self that we identify with, is present at the very beginning of the unborn child's formation. And in fact, Judaism teaches that the soul that a father and mother bring into this world merits a share of eternity. So the life of a baby begins long before he or she is born. Unless someone posits the question of when life begins as simply an issue of theology or philosophy, there's a question of viability within the bill that I think that the Senator's bill addresses. For example, an unborn baby's heart will begin to beat 18 to 21 days after fertilization. And at a certain stage, an unborn child will begin to suck his or her thumb and listen to music on loudspeakers during his mother's pregnancy. And a baby is born with a better ability for neuronal encoding of speech sounds. So I'd just like to conclude with the following teaching. There's a passage in the Bible that I think many of you are familiar with. It says that when God came to Cain after having killed his brother, he said, "The blood of your brother cries out." But the Hebrew word for blood, dam, is not used in that context. The word dameh, which is plural, the bloods of your brother cry out. So what then is the understanding of that term, that plural term? So our tradition comes to teach that when an individual's life is taken, not only is that person's life taken, but every person who would come forth from that person is murdered as well. So therefore, our tradition teaches that a person who takes one life is as if they've killed an entire world. But the good news is that a person who saves one life is considered as if they've saved an entire world. So that's what I believe that the Senator's bill purports and hopes to do, to be able to save not only the most valuable and vulnerable in our community, but to be able to save thousands and thousands of lives that will come forth from those children who are subject to abortion.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Go ahead, Senator Lewis.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Are you aware that Reform, Conservative, Reconstruction, the National Council of Jewish Women support reproductive health care?
I am.
I'm not on in choice.
I am.
Okay, yeah, you are aware. So do you think every Missourian should have to abide by your religious beliefs?
So to answer your question, Senator, I would say that my religious beliefs, a 3,300-year-old religious belief, is part of the Judeo-Christian ethic upon which not only this United States was founded upon, but the great state of Missouri was founded upon long before the more modern or liberal movements of Judaism came to the fore. So I'm not expressing an orthodox point of view. I'm expressing a point of view that is, as I said, 3,300 years old, and is something that's accepted by individuals who I would consider to be serious Jews and individuals who I would consider to be serious Christians, and are familiar with not only the laws of our Bible, but are familiar with the ethos and the morals. So therefore, I maintain unqualifiedly that I am not expressing a denominational perspective, but an American perspective and an ethical and moral perspective upon which our country and our state was founded.
Okay, so just to add, so Reform, Conservative, Reconstruction, sects of Jewish denomination, they are not, in your opinion, considered serious Jews?
No, I would not speak about any individual. I don't have God's phone number, so I can't speak about any individual.
Okay, because I thought that's
But
what you
right,
said.
no. Any individual is judged by God based upon criteria that are far beyond my ability. But I can tell you that in terms of the values of what Judaism represents, there are traditional values that, as I said, ma'am, are 3,300 years old, and much like in the same way that in plumbing and medicine and law, there are individuals who might stray from the tenets and might be guilty of malpractice. There are individuals within religion as well who unfortunately can't be sued for malpractice, but nonetheless represent a progressive, woke orientation that strays from what it is that traditional American and theological beliefs exist that have been practiced and understood for literally millennia.
Well, thank you for your testimony, and I definitely think it's worth noting that there are different religious beliefs on different sides of this issue. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Senator Nicola.
Thank you, sir, very much for your testimony. Did you say when you began, are you a rabbi?
I am.
Well, thank you very much. We share the same God and same Father. I'd like to ask you just a couple questions.
Please.
Does the scripture say, God speaking directly, that the life is in the blood?
It does.
Yes, I would agree with you. It does. That's why Jesus came and spilled his blood, which is spilling his life. I want to ask you another question. It's a medical question, but it's an easy one. So for a woman to get pregnant, is her egg alive or would it be dead?
Unfertilized or fertilized?
Just ready for fertilization. Would that egg be alive or would it be dead?
I would, in my very non-medical opinion, I would say that it would be as alive as any other part of her body.
So for a healthy man to fertilize that egg, would his sperm be alive or would it be dead?
that my same answer would apply, that it would be as alive as any other part of his body.
Thank you. So there's no death involved. Both the man's sperm and the woman's egg is alive. So it's always life if the woman's going to get pregnant. So there's life even before conception. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I would agree with that. Not a separate entity of a human
Correct.
life, but I would agree with you, Senator, that
Correct.
there is life there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony.
Okay.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, please make sure you leave your witness form there on the table. Thank you. Okay, anyone here to testify against? Against?
Against.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Madam Chairman, against only with trepidation. For the record, my name is Ron Calzone. I'm one of the directors of Missouri First, and I want to begin by saying how much I admire Senator Schnelting. Anytime there's a call to protect life, over the last 9 years he's been in the legislature, he's the first one to jump up and say, "Here am I, send me." And so I greatly appreciate what he's trying to do with this SJR, and I probably would support this SJR if it was a couple years in the future. Many of us have spent the last 50 years trying to reverse Roe v. Wade or counteract its influence. 50 years. That's tenacity. It takes tenacity to keep fighting for 50 years. And the only thing I've got to say is it's too early to give up on a complete solution. It's too early. Let's use some of that same tenacity for a full repeal. I don't think the voters were fully informed. One side tremendously outspent the other side. Let's give the voters another chance. You all are not making any decisions. You're just asking the voters. I mean, you would be just asking the voters, are you sure this is what you want to do?
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none? Appreciate it. Next, in favor, we're going to start limiting our time. We have to be out of here in an hour, so we're going to start limiting our time to 2 minutes. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Susan Klein, representing Missouri Right to Life, here to go on record in support of SJR33. I want to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill forward. It's difficult for all of us, and thanks Senator Moon for his comments. He's absolutely right on. This is a difficult time for all of us, as I said. But as we look at where we are today, we lived for 50 years, as the previous witness said, under Roe versus Wade. Over 65 million lives were lost. We fought hard. We didn't like incrementalism. We didn't like what we had to do at that time. But we know that we were living under the Supreme Court's wrongful ruling to allow innocent lives to be killed. So we are where we are today with Amendment 3. Amendment 3 is known to be worse than Roe versus Wade. We know that the extent of Amendment 3 is wide open, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But as the sponsor said, we were outspent $30 million, to our $3 million. So, and there was a lot of false information that was put out there. We heard that throughout Missouri whenever we were out, talking to people and listening to their concerns. Their major concern was whether women would get care for miscarriage or ectopic pregnancy. Of course, that's what the $30 million, a lot of it was spent on commercials saying that women are going to die if Amendment 3 doesn't pass. Well, Dobbs overturned Roe in June of 2022. From June of 2022 to today, women have not died. They've been able to get care for miscarriages. They've been able to get care for ectopic pregnancies. And I know that the other side also, I know my 2 minutes is up. The other side said that, that some of the things that the pro-lifers were concerned about were never going to happen. Well, the day after Amendment 3 passed, there was a lawsuit filed. And many things that we had said were going to happen was going to happen. and is going to happen. Licensing of abortion clinics has been removed. Health and safety regulations have been removed. If we don't act and do something immediately, women are going to die.
Thank you for your testimony. If you just leave a witness form right there on the table.
I do. Thank you.
Just due to time, we still have another bill to get through, so thank you. Anyone here to testify against?
I'm going to wait to do for informational. I was just worried we're going to run out of time.
Okay,
so.
no, if we do run out of time, we will recess and come back.
Okay.
All right? There is a state of the, yes, today at 10 o'clock, so we have to be out of the building, out of the room, but we can, they're just checking to see if we can come back and continue. So anyone here to testify against? Keep your testimony to 2 minutes, please.
Okay, I will try to keep this quick. My name is Yvonne Reeves Chong. I am the vice chair of the Missouri Democratic Party. I am here speaking in my very own peculiar voice. I've served on the boards of crisis pregnancy centers. I've been a donor to resource pregnancy centers for decades. I am deeply faithful. My faith is grounded in Jesus, in those words that said, there are two greatest commandments: love God, love your neighbor. And that's what guides every single thing I do. So when you're uncomfortable with abortion, I get it. I get it. I share that. But my faith demands that I address the cause. In being in those crisis pregnancy centers, I know that 80% of the women seeking elective abortions, they're failures on our part. It's a lack of resources. It's lack of protections against getting fired. It's the lack of being able to have a paid maternity leave. It's not, this state has made it nigh impossible for women to be safely pregnant. I wish, and I'm imploring upon you, and I'm going to follow Senator Moon, in Jesus' name, I'm imploring you to start going upstream and address your discomfort with providing the services women need so that they are not forced into dire economic circumstances. We know that abortion bans don't work. In fact, after Dobbs, I think 2023, the first time the number of abortions went over 1 million, with all the bans, with all the states completely banning it, because you made it more dangerous to be pregnant.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness?
Just an observation briefly. I'm grateful that you called me out on that
Sure.
because I am a follower of Christ. However, I think we may be thinking about it from a different angle, perhaps. I have had several women come to me and tell me that if abortion had been illegal in Missouri at the time they had abortions, they wouldn't have done it. And so that tells me that I think we probably are looking at it differently, and we can have conversation afterward, because I don't want to take, I'm not asking you a question, so I'm not looking for a response necessarily, but let's talk afterward, because I think we're looking at it from a different angle. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I would agree. We are definitely looking at that from a different angle.
Senator Nuremberg?
Yeah, Madam Chair, very briefly. I want to highlight what you said in conclusion. Abortion bans don't work.
No.
Abortion bans don't work. We have seen data across the nation that despite whatever laws are in place, they do not work. People will find care, or they will take that care into their own hands. And that's some of the most difficult cases to see. When folks are asking, has this happened in Missouri? Have women died because they didn't have access to care? Yes, but there's HIPAA in place, folks. We can't tell people's personal stories, but people are coming to us sharing personal stories. I can tell you, as somebody who has had very difficult stories, and I've shared those, but you know, one is when I miscarried one day before my 12-week appointment, and I talked through with my physician throughout the night as my husband was worried if I was losing too much blood and went to take me to the hospital.
Yeah.
When I went into that doctor's office, they could not tell if that was self-induced or I had a spontaneous abortion.
Yeah.
There is no distinction, folks. But what we are doing is we are restricting care to the point that people are dying and they're fleeing our state. And they're going to continue to flee our state. Thank you.
I thank you, and I'm going to expand, not just nationwide, globally. I can tell you from the data that the countries with the most harsh abortion bans are also the countries that have the greatest numbers of abortions. And those Scandinavian countries that have the most lenient abortion laws, but the best social systems, are also the nations with the fewest numbers of abortions. Abortion bans do not work.
I think, just as a comment, I think that we have just found a commonality based on the testimony that's been given is that people are dying through abortion. So, did you have a question?
I don't think that was the statement at all.
Well, you're
Absolutely
implying
not.
that people are dying, and I'm just saying I agree. People are dying.
I think you took the wrong
So I'll just
inclination
insert
from
the
my
comment
speech.
then.
Thank you.
I'm not saying from your comment. I'm
Okay,
just saying.
thank you.
If that's what we're saying, people are dying. Yes, I agree with that. People are dying. Go ahead, Senator Lewis.
Thank you for being here. I think, I think many of us, have very strong religious beliefs. And what we've even heard just in the hour that we've been here, that within different Christianity, Judaism, there's different beliefs on choice and reproductive health care. And I think that I want to bring it back to personal private health care decisions should be up to the individual and their healthcare provider. And what we've heard when the ban came in place, healthcare providers are calling their attorneys versus treating women because they don't know what to do. And, I've talked for years about the healthcare deserts we have, the shortage of healthcare providers we have in the state of Missouri, and tying their hands doesn't help any of us.
Yeah, and thank you. I love your comments on faith. Faith is always personal, and the decision on abortion is always personal. My duty in my faith is to meet needs and to love people. I've worked in this area for 10 years. I've hugged women struggling with what to do. But at the end of the day, I always respect a choice because that's what my faith demands. There's a saying that we have in my church, and if you guys will excuse me, we say this a lot. God is God, and I am not. God is God, and the government is not.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, ma'am. I would certainly agree with that last statement. I just want to address something, no question, just address something, because I've heard abortion bans don't work.
That's correct.
We didn't have abortion in this country until 1973, which means for the first 1,973 years, we didn't have abortion. I think it worked pretty well.
That was not a question, it was a comment, but it was a grossly incorrect comment. There were abortions, they were just illegal abortions.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any other questions? See none. Make sure you leave your witness form on the table.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. Samuel Lee with Campaign Life Missouri to go on record in support of Senator Schnelting's SJR33. We're very grateful for him to introducing this. He may not recall the date, but it was almost 6 years ago to the day that he introduced the Right to Life of the Unborn Act when he was Representative Schnelting, also known as commonly as the trigger law. That's the law that went into almost immediately into effect when the Dobbs decision was made in June of 2022, and which immediately completely protected unborn children. And so we're grateful for you continuing your legacy in support of protecting all human life, born and unborn. I want to echo Senator's comments about how the public had no idea of the effects of what Amendment 3 would do. And I will demonstrate that by Planned Parenthood's lawsuit and Judge Jerry Zhang's order from December 20th, where she struck down, under Amendment 3, she struck down a law that prohibits abortion in Missouri based on the race or the sex of the unborn child, or that the unborn child might have Down syndrome. No one ever talked about that. But literally we have in Missouri now a constitutional right to abort a baby who is black, brown, or mixed race. Literally we have in our Constitution right now, under Amendment 3, a right to abort a baby because she is a girl. Literally we have in our Constitution right now a right to abort a baby who might, based on a diagnosis, have Down syndrome. That's the state of the situation we are in right now. And at no time did anyone ever discuss that when Amendment 3 was being discussed. Certainly the TV ads didn't. And I would say even on the part of pro-lifers, we did not even imagine something as egregious as aborting babies based on their race or their sex or they have Down syndrome, that was part of Amendment 3. We're thankful for this proposal that will undo some of the worst effects of that amendment.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony. Next in opposition. Opposition. Dorman, will you see if there's anyone else? All right, so that concludes the testimony in opposition. We will now just be hearing from those in favor. Try still to keep we're trying to get a hearing room confirmed for after 10 o'clock if we need to, but just keep your comments to 2 minutes or less, please.
I will be brief. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jamie Morris here, registered lobbyist with Missouri Catholic Conference, here in support of SJR33. I won't belabor what prior witnesses have said, but to Mr. Lee's point, as he said, I spoke to a lot of groups leading up to Amendment 3. The provisions he has pointed out, that was not something that was ever brought up. We heard a lot of concerns, again, based on the advertising, based on the money that was being spent. I think there was confusion out there, and just to kind of mention one other thing, I do agree that this has to be a broad solution, that we have to not just look at the demand, the supply of abortion, but the demand. The Catholic Church, we do have charities, and we do, and I will be here in a couple hours on a diaper bank bill. We have to address the societal issues surrounding abortion and the needs of women, that are abortion-minded before and after they have children. But that still doesn't get rid of the need to also protect the child in the womb. And we can do both, and I think we should do both. I do want to thank the Senator for bringing this forward again, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment. I really appreciate your testimony, because it was alluded to earlier that we need to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations about some of this stuff. And what's in front of us is one element of that. Mm-hmm. We often debate a lot of the other elements in other policy, as I insinuated earlier, that we deliberate in this committee. So this is one component to that conversation. So I thank you for your clarifying.
Yeah, I would
question.
never want one to take away from the other. I think they're both necessary, and we can't use one to just kind of disregard the other side of it.
Yes, thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Next, in favor?
Byron Keelan, Freedom Principle, Missouri. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of SJR 33. What transpired this past November was a travesty to women and children, in my opinion, born and unborn. Amendment 3 is not about reproductive health. Amendment 3 does nothing to protect or promote reproductive care. What it does is allow abortions up to the time of birth, including partial birth abortions. It threatens women's health by removing all health and safety standards by allowing abortions in unlicensed clinics and performed by so-called medical professionals. It protects a billion-dollar industry of Planned Parenthood by forcing Missouri taxpayers to pay for abortions. It makes Missouri a target for sex trafficking of minors by removing parental consent for abortions. And it legalizes the gender transitions for minors, including chemical castration, puberty blockers, and sterilizing surgeries. SJR 33, in my opinion, is a bill that will restore and protect women's and children's health. It protects women by requiring them to get an abortion in a licensed facility by a licensed physician. It would require them to, if they are victims of rape and incest, to receive an abortion, and it allows for the right to health care in cases of miscarriages or ectopic pregnancies or other medical emergencies. SJR 33 also restores the ban on public funding of abortion. It protects Missouri's from becoming a sex trafficking state by restoring parental consent for minors, and it protects children from becoming victims by prohibiting the use of surgeries, hormones, or drugs to assist with gender transition. So SJR 33, in my opinion, is what voters thought they were voting for in November. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Thank you, Senator.
Just real quickly, I'm not going to refute every point that you just made, but what I can say is a lot of what you just shared is inaccurate, will be proved to be inaccurate as we go through the process. And it's frustrating to listen to lies that have been spewed about this. Obviously, this will continue to play out through the process. We'll certainly see it play out through the courts, but taxpayer-funded abortion is not a thing, and it's not a thing under this Amendment 3. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next, in favor? Begin when you're ready.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, and members of the committee, thank you. And Madam Chair, may I entertain the committee and those in the room for a question?
We probably should just keep it to testimony
Okay.
only. Thank you.
So thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Oscar Harrell. I am a Missourian. I live in Arnold. I was born and raised in Missouri. I am thankful that I was born in 1981 and that my mother is not pregnant past the judge's decision. She was a low-income to no-income mother, single mother, and I may not be here today if she was in that situation now. I am speaking on behalf of Show Me Sentinel and Freedom Principle Missouri. I'm here to affirm the fundamental duty of government is to protect innocent life and support policies that uphold the sanctity of life from conception. Sir William Blackstone, whose commentaries on the laws of England shaped the very foundation of American law, stated unequivocally that life is the immediate gift of God. a right inherent by nature in every individual. He recognized that even the unborn child had legal protections, noting that an infant in its mother's womb is supposed, in law, to be born for many purposes. Our legal tradition has long acknowledged that life is not a privilege granted by the state, but a right that the state is obligated to defend. Furthermore, the core principle of government is encapsulated in the maxim primum non nocere, first do no harm. The government does not have the authority to sanction the deliberate taking of innocent human life. And if the state can protect a child from harm outside of the womb, why should it responsibly be any different inside the womb? To permit the destruction of the unborn is to reject the very purpose of government, the defense of the weak, the innocent, and those without a voice. I'm a United States veteran, and I'm very familiar with protecting life. I prefer to do it by the pen versus the sword. I urge this committee to recognize its duty in preserving life as a matter of justice, morality, and sound legal tradition. A just society does not abandon its most vulnerable members. I ask you to uphold the foundational principle that life is to be protected, not discarded. This is testimony in support of SJR 33.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions, Senator Moon?
Just briefly, thank you for your testimony and for your service to our country. And I agree with you. I think
You're worth it.
I think we ought to be protecting with the pen as opposed to the sword. And your last statements there made my points entirely. So I'm grateful to you. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Any other questions? See none? Make sure you just leave your witness form on the table, please.
You do the testimony too?
Yes, you may, and we can disperse it if you'd like. Next in favor? We're probably going to go for another 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to recess and re-adjourn at noon in the hearing room next door.
Good morning.
When you're ready.
My name is Timothy Faber, and I am here in support of SJR 33. I fully agree with Senator Moon in that it would trouble my conscience if I were in your all seats as a senator to vote on this. However, Mr. Senator Moon, my conscience would trouble me more to not save some. And I believe that this is an effort to do that. In the past year, Missouri voters passed Amendment 3, but it was by a very narrow margin. I personally know of several people who voted for the amendment because they were confused and did not understand what they were voting for. The ballot language was deceptive, and the parties supporting it were not being honest in their advertising. IP efforts allow for no discussion, deliberation, or compromise. This SJR allows that. That's why we're here today. And it gives the voters a true choice of either to affirm what was approved in November or to choose a better alternative. Maybe not what I want, maybe not what Senator Moon wants or some others want, but it would be better than what we have. With Amendment 3, voters who generally oppose abortion would not accept it for rape or incest, but they were forced to accept it, the removal of medical and safety standards. They were forced to accept no parental consent for minors and other things. And this bill, I believe, would more closely align with where the majority of Missouri voters are. And if we truly believe in a democratic republic, we should give the voters the right to decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Senator Lewis?
Thank you for being here. Just want to point out, we keep hearing that voters were confused or misled, but I think it's worth noting that this initiative, there were over 3,000 or 380,000 Missourians who signed on to it, the largest in the history of the IP initiative. So grassroots effort led by Missourians wanting to get it on the ballot. The folks I talked to, you know, it was like a #1 issue I heard over and over and over. So, you know, I think we just have to remember that the signatures were gathered. It was record-breaking signatures.
Signatures were gathered in a deceptive way, ma'am. I've talked to numerous people who said they supported women's health care and they signed the petition, not knowing what they were signing.
Okay, we'll probably just have to agree to disagree because
Apparently
I believe that people are educated and know what they're doing. And
people can be educated when they're told the truth, ma'am.
thank you.
Just a question. How much money again was spent on this?
There was
on
over
the
$30 million spent in support of Amendment 3.
And were those signatures gathered? Is that, do you
I
define paid signature gatherers?
I talked to 2 signature gatherers personally, not that I was looking for them, but I talked to 2 who both were from out of state and were being paid $25 an hour to gather signatures.
So, I don't know about you, but my definition of grassroots is not paid activism.
Correct. I would agree with that.
Thank you for that clarifying
Thank you.
question. Thank you for your testimony. Please leave your witness form on the table. Next in favor.
Good
Begin when you're
morning.
ready. Thanks.
My name is Vic Rackers, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. I believe a baby is a baby is a baby, who really in their right mind believe it is acceptable to end the life of a baby inside or outside the womb. I believe the circumstances of one's conception do not affect their value as a person. I believe life begins at conception and should be valued henceforth. I believe we need more babies. On the way over here on the radio this morning, I heard that older adults now will outnumber minors. So our population is in decline. I believe we should subsidize adoption and not abortion. I believe the legislature should act to protect the innocent lives of the unborn in Missouri. I believe every baby, born and unborn, deserves the right to life. I believe the legislature should have passed IP reform so we wouldn't have to be here today. I am happy to say all 3 of our children are expecting babies this year, and we couldn't be more excited. These are my beliefs, and I hope you will take time to consider them and work to protect the precious lives of all the unborn. Innocent human life is cherished, and the practice of abortion should be abhorred. Let's agree to make abortion extremely rare. Let's please work to protect the value of all human life, and especially the innocent unborn in Missouri. And if I could address a couple of things that have happened so far this morning. Senator Moon, I appreciate you. I appreciate all you've ever done. I respect your stance on almost everything. But I believe if we can protect 9.5 out of 10 of those starbursts, or those starfish, that we should do that, and then we can continue to work on the other 0.5 that this bill would allow. One more thing, are the opponents in favor of letting the people, the perpetrators of rape and incest, go unreported and then have an abortion? Doesn't that sort of destroy the evidence? I mean, it seems ridiculous. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I hope we get the legislators get something done to protect the lives of the unborn in Missouri.
Thank you so much for coming. Make sure you leave your witness form. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Next in favor. Begin when you're ready.
Okay. My name is Amy DeClue. I am from Franklin County, Missouri, and I come here as a surgical nurse. And I've been a nurse for 18 years, surgical nurse for 5 years, a mom of 5. I have 2 children that I've birthed, 2 I've adopted, and 1 I've fostered. My youngest, as a matter of fact, we adopted when he was 2, and he has Down syndrome. So I kind of have a special place in my heart for all these babies they think don't deserve to live, who are born with Down syndrome. I can tell you firsthand as a surgical nurse, there was a lot of misinformation going around about ectopic and miscarriage care within the medical community. And to hear that doctors didn't think they could practice because women had an ectopic or a miscarriage tells me they might not deserve the license that they have, because all the OBGYNs that I worked with had no question as to whether they could treat the patients that came in. And like I said, as a surgical nurse who was a surgical nurse after Dobbs came down, we did not stop doing miscarriage care. We did not stop doing ectopic care. As a matter of fact, I'm missing work today. Granted, we are post Amendment 3. I'm missing work today where one of my patients was having miscarriage care performed. So what people don't want to talk about is what abortion clinics do to women. So I have personally cared for women who have had problems post-abortion. They come in with products of conception still inside them and bleeding heavily, and then we have to take them back to surgery and take care of them, because Planned Parenthood's not going to do that. They don't care. You're a business, you're a person that they can get in there, take your money, take your baby, and then out the door you go. Also have had to take care of a woman, unfortunately, who had an abortion in her 20s, couldn't get pregnant in her 30s, all to find out that it was because Planned Parenthood had botched her abortion and scarred up her uterus so badly she'd never have children. So things like that people don't want to talk about when they talk about caring for women. Planned Parenthood doesn't care for women. So I just want to say too, I know Senator Schnelting has done a ton of work on this resolution. He's done a lot of research on it, and unfortunately, and I share a lot of the same sentiments as Senator Moon. I respect you greatly, and I am somebody who doesn't want to see any babies die. However, I know the voters in Missouri are not going to allow us to have that right now, and I'm not willing to wait years and let thousands die until we can reach that point. We're going to have to claw our way back to that point, I feel like, and this is a good place to start. So I want to thank you, Senator Schnelting, for everything you've done.
Any questions for this witness?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Could you tell me what you said you do again?
I'm a surgical nurse.
You're a surgical nurse. So I've got a question for you. Sure. Before Amendment 3, was there anything in Missouri law that was keeping women from being able to access necessary health care?
No, not at all. Actually, I had to dispel a lot of rumors in my community about what other people were saying was happening. That was not happening.
Was there anything, so there wasn't anything in Missouri law that would say that a woman couldn't have a DNC, a woman couldn't have the necessary health care that she needed?
No.
From all the ads that I saw, from the people that were gathering signatures, from the conversations that I had, from folks that I was hearing from, it seems like the entire campaign was built around, the campaign for Amendment 3 was built around women not being able to get necessary health care unless we pass this amendment.
Correct. And I knocked a lot of doors and talked to a lot of people trying to advocate against Amendment 3, and that's what was coming out.
I am aware of individuals in my part of the state that were under the impression that they had to vote for this amendment in order for women to be able to get health care that had nothing to do with an abortion.
Correct.
So then it seems to me like the entire campaign around Amendment 3 was based on something that was absolutely false.
It was a lie, yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Just a comment I want to make. Thank you for bringing up some of the uncomfortable conversations about what's happening on the other side with women who are being negatively impacted by and through some of those abortion procedures. As something that is one of those uncomfortable conversations that we haven't yet seemed to be very willing to have. So thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, is there anybody who cannot stay till and come back at the noon hearing? If you cannot come back, then please come forward and give your testimony now.
Go ahead, about 2 minutes. About 2 minutes?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Pastor Brian Davis. I'm a father of 8 and grandfather of 3 as well. And I do have to say I'm in unwavering support of SJR8. And thank you for letting me have this time here, and in firm opposition to SJR33. This is not just my opinion. It is a plea for truth. I've heard a lot of testimony about, circumstantial evidence and things like this, but this is about thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill is what our God says. Yet Missouri allows for killing of the most innocent among us. SJR8 declares what science, what logic, and what God's word affirms. Life begins at conception and assures that every unborn child receives equal protection under the law. SJR33, however, compromises that truth. It allows exceptions, telling some children their lives are worth less than others. But a baby is not guilty of the crime of their father. A child that is conceived in rape is no less made in the image of God than any other. To take that life is to violate God's command, thou shalt not kill. I minister outside of an abortion clinic, and I met a man there one time who was the product of rape. His mother could have killed him, but thank God she didn't. She chose to let him live. And both of them have a wonderful relationship. He's very thankful, of course, she gave him that opportunity to live. And that's why SJR8 is a much better bill than SJR33. Missouri has lost ground because of the compromise I hear in the room today. Pro-life leaders support, they opposed true protection bills. And politicians stall justice while children continue to die. I just want to say this real quick. If abortion is murder, we cannot regulate it. We must abolish it. SJR33 is not the solution. It is a failed attempt to manage evil. We need real justice, real protection, and real truth. That's what SJR8 provides.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? Go ahead, Senator Lewis.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for being here. Do you believe that people who have abortion should be punished?
Yes.
And to what extent?
I'm sorry. People who say
like a woman that has an abortion. Do you believe that she should be punished?
I believe murder or abortion should be criminalized. Yes.
To the extent of like jail time, capital punishment.
We already have laws around that already, so the laws are already in place. I don't make laws.
We don't have laws about abortion. That's what we're discussing.
Well, we have
now.
laws about murder.
So you think abortion is equivalent to murder?
It actually doesn't matter what I think, to be honest. It matters what God thinks. God thinks that thou shalt not murder. So it's not me, it's God.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I think we've had a robust conversation of different sects within Christianity and Judaism and different religions, and how
Sure.
even within those different religions, there's different beliefs. But thank you for sharing what your personal beliefs are.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Make sure you leave your witness form on the
I
table.
submitted mine online. Is that
Perfect.
good?
All right. With that, we are going to recess. Can I get a second? All right. We will recess until noon in Senate Committee Room 2. Can I get a second? Second. All right, thank you, Senator. We were hearing from people testifying in favor. I think we had heard everyone who had testified against. So we will just reconvene at that point. We have 1 hour to hear the rest of this bill and to hear SJR8. If you are here to hear SJR8 or to testify in favor of that, can you raise your hand? Okay. All right. So if you're here still to testify in favor of Senator Schnelting's bill, can you raise your hand? Okay. Informational purposes we will cover. Okay, so we'll just begin with the first person in favor of SJR33. I forgot the number. So if you're in favor of, we'll take you. Go ahead and, yeah, come on up. And then we'll go to informational purposes. Oh, go ahead and just sit down. Yeah.
We'll have you speak at the mic, yeah.
And sir, if you don't mind, just take a witness form.
Yes.
And fill that out and leave it there on the table when you're done. All right, begin when you're ready.
So my name's Dustin Atwood. I actually came here for the rally that all of you can hear out there today. And forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I feel like it's very fitting that we have all these folks out there that really had genetic issues and they're trying to find help, essentially. So that's what I want to speak about just for a brief moment. And I appreciate the fact you all have listened to both sides of everything going on today. So I realize you guys have no background on who I am or why I'm here. I have my wife and I have a medically challenged child that was essentially born with trisomy 13. And that probably doesn't mean a lot to all of you here in the room. And normally I encourage people not to Google that term because it's terrible, to be very, very honest. And so what concerns me of what I've heard today, and I feel like our ability to listen is one of the most powerful things that we can have. And so I've heard both sides or different in the hallway, etc. And we decided to have children later in life. My wife and I have 4 older children. Everything was fine. And until you're in that spot with a medically complex child, I don't think you really have gravity to understand what that's like. So very quickly, our daughter would have been a prime candidate to be aborted for what we're talking about today. And one of the best things in life is joy, in my opinion. And to see her go through absolute hell and get to the point where, the doctors wished us well and basically tried to send us home, and we just didn't accept that. And so had, the alternative been happened, or we had taken the doctor's word for how terrible this is, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys today. So she's going to be total care for our entire life, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Honestly, I think it is an absolute blessing for us because I get to see the joy that she shares with us. But to put all that stake in a doctor's word, pre-birth, or even at our point where we found out, we paid extra money to see if she had any issues before she was born. Nothing showed up. We went to multiple specialists. They had contradicting ideas. She did show a left justified heart, so there were some things in there. My point is that they're practicing medicine. And if something comes up and you make a life and death decision off of a doctor's opinion, that's really not fair in my opinion. They don't know everything, and I've seen great doctors and I've seen very, very poor doctors. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about here today, that if we're going to make an exclusion for medically challenged instance, such as a lot of the folks that are here doing very well. I mean, you see some of the happiest people ever out there. To allow them to be aborted, I think, is wrong. So that's my statement.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness?
Yes, please.
I don't really have a question. I'm just thanking you for your testimony. Very moving, and you sound like an amazing dad. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll just add, I do agree that it is very difficult, and my son's autistic. Obviously, his condition is a lot different than a lot of other parents. But I remember dealing with the heaviness of trying to get the help that he needed at a time when autism wasn't even, there were no autism services. Nonverbal, no eye contact.
Yep.
It's the weight that parents feel as they're trying to take care of. But there is not one thing in this world that I wouldn't do for that child.
Agreed.
No price I would not pay. So just thank you for your testimony.
Excellent.
Appreciate
Thank you all very much.
Anyone else here to testify in favor of the bill? For informational purposes only.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Kiesling. I'm an attorney, a mother, and I was conceived in rape when my birth mother was abducted at knife point by a serial rapist. She went to 2 illegal abortions, and I was almost killed. But the back alley conditions and the fact that it was illegal caused her to back out. When we met, she was happy to meet me, but told me if abortion had been legal, she absolutely would have aborted me. 6 years later, she changed her mind. And now today, we're both thankful we were both spared the horror of abortion. I wasn't lucky. I was protected. I literally owe my birth to pro-life legislators who saw that mine was a life worth saving. Today, I have a global network of over 1,200 who were conceived and raped like me, and mothers who became pregnant by rape and incest and sex trafficking. Rape victims are 4 times more likely to die within the next year after the abortion. They have a higher murder rate, higher rate of suicide, drug overdose. It's absurd to think that more violence inside of a woman's womb brings healing. It does not. Sex traffickers, child molesters love abortion. They cannot continue perpetrating without the local abortion clinic. This legislation here today, this bill, is dehumanizing, demoralizing. It would be the first time in United States history that a state constitution would enshrine the killing of a group that legislators have determined subhuman, that they have determined to be pawns, that they've determined to be expendable. And we are just as worthy of love and life and protection as anyone else. There's another way to go about this. You could introduce, just like they did in Tennessee and Iowa, you could have a bill, a proposal initiative to a ballot measure to say that there's not a right to an abortion in your state, and that it would simply just all of your laws would go back into effect. You don't have to do it this way. And as you heard earlier, by highlighting the rape issue, you're still not winning them over. They're still going to have the whole campaign be about rape, that 12 weeks is not enough, and that reporting requirement is too much. And I would ask that you would amend this bill. Remove the rape exception, at the very least put in a severability clause, and amend it to make it a bill that would find that there's not a right to an abortion under the Constitution.
Do you have the statistics to which you're sharing with everyone?
Yeah, there's only 2 studies ever done on this issue. The book Victims and Victors and the Elliott Institute highlight these studies that have been done. The latest numbers that even are put out by RAIN are that there's over 32,000 rape-related pregnancies throughout the U.S. every year. The abortion rate for rape victims is half the rate of the average unplanned pregnancy because they don't want more violence. The average unplanned pregnancy, over 50% abort. Rape victims, over 50% choose to parent. 15 to 25% abort, and 25% choose adoption. Your average unplanned pregnancy nationwide, only 1% choose adoption. And so they don't want more violence in their body. We have a couple dozen in Missouri in my organization. They wish they could be here today, but a lot of illness and deaths and last minute, requests for them to come, hours drive from Cape Girardeau and all over the state, and they weren't able to make it here today. But one woman, Tiffany, she became pregnant by her uncle, who took her to a Planned Parenthood, who saying that he's her father. No proof whatsoever required that this is actually the parent. And she tried to kill herself afterwards a couple of times. And it wasn't until she tried to kill herself that he finally stopped raping her. All the abortion did was protect and enable him to continue perpetrating.
So you're implying that there's a possibility that the Planned Parenthood, if somebody comes in with a minor, even an adult, another adult, saying that they need an abortion, I guess it would be, especially in the case of a minor, but they could vouch as their parent. There's nothing to verify that adult is the parent.
I don't know if you've ever seen Lila Rose live actions undercover videos, but they are absolutely enabling and protecting sex traffickers and child molesters. And then there's, the rare case where they do want to, the woman does want to prosecute. And I heard a doctor testifying earlier that, it's not our job to be involved in legal stuff and court things. And, Yeah, well, you know, when a woman wants to prosecute, you have to maintain chain of custody. Abby Johnson, who left the abortion industry, she used to be the manager of a Planned Parenthood clinic. She was responsible for chain of custody. And she said that it was so ironic that the one unborn child who had high value placed upon them within the abortion clinic that got the white glove treatment was actually the child conceived in rape. And she thought, what a strange dichotomy. You know, it's the opposite of what society says, because they were placing a high value on, you know, the child's remains for purposes of prosecution. There was a detective that was, you know, from the sex victims unit, who's part of my organization, who told me that the hardest day on the job was when he had to go retrieve the remains of a child who was conceived in rape, and he himself was conceived in rape. And he says he went to the clinic and they handed the child's remain in a paper bag. And he just said something welled up inside of him, and he said, you go back and you get a box or something more dignified. He just, going back to the evidence room with that child, he said it was the most difficult day of his career. It is dehumanizing and demoralizing when we are systematically targeted. We're called demon seed, evil seed, horrible reminder, rapist child. We never get called rape victim's child, and that's what I am. I'm a child of a rape victim. And to suggest that the rapist should have parental rights by assigning that child to him is horrifying. When most women are raising their children, they're sick of hearing legislators call their child the rapist child. That's a rape victim's child, and they deserve dignity and protection. And it is completely demoralizing to have a legislature target you. I mean, you're deliberating. This is not a woman in an unplanned pregnancy who, during chaos, makes a rash decision to have an abortion out of crisis. These are, you know, well-educated elected officials who are deliberating, making this decision whether you're going to target a people group and whether you're going to enshrine in your Constitution that these are people who are subhuman. The 14th Amendment of the United States Supreme Court says that no state shall deny a person their right to life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and that no state shall deprive a person shall deny a person of equal protection of the laws. And you're either denying us equal protection, or you're denying that we're a person. I'm a person. I'm a person. And this is completely demoralizing, and we deserve protection. And so do the rape victims, because they're worse off after the abortion. They deserve real hope. My birth mother said that there were no pregnancy centers back then, but if there had been, she would have gone. But she said nobody offered her any other help or hope, just abortion. And women deserve better than abortion, not more violence in the exact spot where they were already violated.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. If you have any information or data that you'd like to share with the rest of the committee, I'd be happy to do that.
My website is RebeccaKiesling.com. That's RebeccaKiesling. I've litigated numerous high-profile cases. I sued the state of Iowa for their discriminatory rape exception in the heartbeat bill. On behalf of our organization, Save the One, the website is www.savetheone.com, and that's the number one, not the word. And that comes from the parable of the lost sheep and the unfortunate motto in the pro-life movement that you save the 99 in exchange for the one. But Jesus said, see that you do not despise any of these little ones. For I tell you, they're angels in heaven, always look upon the face of my Father in heaven. He goes into the parable how the good shepherd leaves the 99 to save the one. And he explains it by saying, for in the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish, and neither should we. And when you accept a rape exception, you're saying, I am willing. And when you sacrifice the one, that is still child sacrifice. And it's an abomination. In a civilized society, we do not punish innocent people for someone else's crime. In Coker v. Georgia, the United States Supreme Court said the rapists don't deserve the death penalty. And in the second case of Kennedy v. Louisiana, they said that even for child molesters, it is cruel and unusual punishment. And so how does the innocent child deserve to die for his crime? I ask people, would you support a law? Would you add an amendment to this that says with a simple report that let's just add that she can also pay someone to kill her rapist? Or just her innocent child? Because that's what abortion is. You're paying to have someone else killed, to have their life snuffed out. And you wouldn't do that to a rapist, so why would you do it to an innocent child?
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions?
Just briefly.
Senator Moon?
Ms. Kiesling, thank you for your testimony. And we only have about 40 minutes or so left in this hearing time, and we have another bill to hear. If you can, as brief as possible, tell me why there should be a severability clause.
So, with the severability clause, at the very least, if you're going to do this with the rape exception in, and then the people of Missouri vote for it as is, it would give my organization, my people group, the power to have our voices heard so that we could at least defend our own lives. So we could file in federal court asking that the law be upheld, but asking for the offensive provisions to be removed as violative of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And if you at least do that, then we could have the opportunity to try to defend our own lives.
To have the public discussion, essentially.
Well, and it would give us a chance, though, to actually defend our lives in court.
Right, in public.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Question?
Just quickly, would you help me out with your name again and what organization you represent?
Rebecca Kiesling.
Okay. And in which organization do you represent? And I should say thanks for your patience and waiting around for us. I know it took a while to
so
get back.
I'm not here on behalf of my organization,
but you referenced that organization a few times. And what organization is that?
Okay, it's Save the One.
Save the One.
SAVE, the one, and it's the number one.
Okay. And Rebecca, where do you live?
I live in Michigan.
In Michigan? Okay. So Save the One, and you are you live and work in Michigan?
Yes, and
Okay.
I speak globally, and I speak in parliaments all over the world, and I testify all over the country, and this is not my first time testifying.
Sure. You seem you're experienced at this, to say the least. Okay. No, and I thank you for sharing that. I was again just trying to figure out where all the information is coming from as we continue this. We're early in the process, and just a very brief comment, Madam Chairwoman, if I may. One of the again, I'm not going to be here to refute every point that folks have said today. However, as we went through, I think, quite frankly, we had a lot of folks here to testify, and we said, we have a time constraint, so we didn't probably have as many folks to testify in opposition or for informational purposes. But since this is the last witness, I believe, for informational purposes, it definitely sounded like a lot of typically informational purposes, and is a clarity of something specific. But I feel like a lot of false information once again was presented, especially, for example, about Planned Parenthood and the what I've seen based on the clinic that's right in my district, a health center that's providing. Quite frankly, just a critical part of our healthcare system, delivering high quality services to patients. I myself has been a patient there. 2.5 million patients served in 2022, 4.6 million tests and treatments for sexually transmitted infections, nearly 213 breast exams, 198,000 Pap tests, 2.3 million birth control services. So these are things that are keeping women safe, alive, detecting cancer early so they can go on to carry a healthy pregnancy, et cetera, et cetera. And the final point I want to make real quick, because I know we need to go to another bill, is when we talk about out-of-state money, out-of-state interest, out-of-state pushes to change our laws, I feel like a conversation that we have to have when we talk about campaign reform or in terms of elections. We're certainly having those in other committees. But again, what's the standard going to be? Is it going to be zero money from out of state, period, including to political campaigns? Zero groups from out of state coming in? I mean, I am a little bit frustrated with saying, well, we can't take money from out of state for a certain issue. I certainly called friends and family from out of state for my own political campaign, but here we can have folks come in to change our Constitution. So just important things to think about. I recognize that that's another conversation for another probably hearing in different days, but always important to point out the folks who are here to testify in organizations that, again, are out-of-state organizations. I think it's something that I've tended to highlight since my time in the House for 5 years, that I always like to drive that point home. And again, I just want to thank anybody who comes to testify. I think it's an important part of the process, and folks who have waited around to have their voice heard. So thank you.
Just for clarity, we did go through all of the ayes and noes, and there were no more here to testify against. And then also, I do believe, again, conversation-wise, that if we're having our state flooded to propose a constitutional amendment and to get it on the ballot, then it seems pretty fair right now to have somebody come in from out of state to testify.
Yeah, and that's what I said. That
Yeah.
that is our current, right? Those are the current
Yes,
laws
correct.
that anybody can come in. But again, just being aware of all of those dynamics at play. And so I think that is the current law. Everybody is playing within the rules of the current law and our current policy.
As I said, there were many women from my network who wanted to be here, who are in our support groups, but for various reasons, they weren't able to travel across state to make it.
Understood. Yeah, if you'll leave your witness form there, and if you have any more information you'd like to share with the committee, then we'd be happy to disperse that.
And I am going to be testifying in support of 8, so I'm not sure if you're transitioning right now, if I should just stay here.
No, in 1 second, yes. So we will, at this time, that concludes the hearing for Senate SJR33. We will move to SJR8. Senator Moon? Yeah, thank you. Begin when you're ready. I'm lacking a pen. Oh, I got one. Okay. Begin when you're ready, Senator.
Thank you. Madam Chair and committee, thank you for allowing us to be here today. My name is Mike Moon. I'm here to present, and I represent the Missouri 29th Senate District. I'm here to present Senate Joint Resolution number 8. And I've often referred back to our founding documents when talking about this particular issue, because in the Declaration of Independence, the second paragraph, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." And so that's latter part where we are part of the government now, and we get our marching orders from those who elected us to be here. But I think it's important that the first inalienable right that was mentioned was life. Because you've heard it before, without life we cannot experience liberty. We can't have property. That's synonymous with the happiness. And I mentioned before that at the moment of fertilization, when a sperm meets an egg, there is a unique DNA sequence formed. It's not the mother's, not the father's. It's unique. That is an individual who they can be recognized and tracked if you want to do that. They can be identified by that unique DNA sample. And in the Missouri Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, it refers to, and I'm just going to turn it open here because it is something that I think we need to hold here. It says that in order to assert our rights, acknowledge our duties, and proclaim the principles on which our government is founded, we declare that all constitutional government is intended to promote the general welfare of the people, that all persons, and I'm talking about that unique DNA strain that was just developed, all persons have a natural right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the enjoyment of the gains of their own industry, that all persons are created equal and are entitled to equal rights and opportunity under the law, that to give security to these things is the principal office of government, and that when the government does not confer this security, it fails in its chief design. So I would caution us today that if we don't consider allowing us and the people of Missouri to determine whether this person with a unique DNA can actually be covered under our laws, we fail. According to the Constitution, our chief design. Let me go on to Missouri Constitution, Article 1, Section 1. It says again, in order to assert our rights and acknowledge our duties and proclaim the principles on which our government is founded, we declare that all political power is vested in and derived from the people, that all government of right originates from the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. And that includes that individual we're talking about, the unique with the unique DNA strand. In the U.S. Constitution, Article or Amendment 14, I don't have that one memorized, so I want to read. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person, a unique strand of DNA, of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. And that's what Senate Joint Resolution seeks to do, is to allow us to enshrine in our Constitution that even those who are developing in the womb are worthy of the protection of the laws that exist in our state. We have in our chamber, the Senate chamber, a saying, and I think I wrote this down correctly, there's nothing politically right that is morally wrong. Ask yourselves this question. Are we looking for something that's politically right but is morally wrong? And I say it's the latter if we don't include these developing human beings to be equally protected. Any questions?
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for the Senator?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, Senator. Senator, I do want to just thank you for your comments at the beginning, and for the Chairwoman, just for always maintaining civility. I know these are very tough issues, right? And obviously there are many things that we agree on, and there are others, and I think this is probably one of the toughest for all of us, quite frankly. So thank you for always being willing to be civil, and certainly in our engagements. I really appreciate that. I'd have to say, when I was looking at bills and resolutions that were filed this legislative session, this I think you win the award for having the one that probably causes me the most heartburn. And I just want to dive into a few questions here that I've been kind of struggling to think about. If this were to pass, how would we implement this? Okay, so would you help me? So if we were to adopt this into our Constitution, how would the state enforce it?
I can't give you every step, of course. However, there would first have to be a cause of action brought by someone. And if that were brought in defense of a developing human baby or being, you have to remember, Senator, they can't speak for themselves. If someone says, who in this room wants to be killed, we have the opportunity to raise our hand or keep our hands in our lap.
Okay, so first step is a cause of action. And then once somebody brings a cause of action, would the state, and let me back up, I guess, just broad question. Would the state track people who are having abortions?
I can't say that in the affirmative or negative because I just don't know how that would work.
Okay, and I don't know either.
I know that one thing, and I wanted to say this a little bit earlier today, but I do know that whatever clinics there are, I know St. Louis in particular, there were several instances where ambulance were summoned for various reasons, and they were shielded in a sense. And I think when we have, if we're using the term medical care, we should be prudent in that care, and any physician who has taken the Hippocratic Oath should do their due diligence to try not to cause harm. And so I think that it comes into this conversation, probably not at this point necessarily,
Okay.
but that came to mind. I wanted to get that out. So causative action could be done in how they would actually be initiated and how they would find that information is a question that I don't have the answer to today.
Okay, and that's what I'm trying to figure out is how would this be enforceable? Senator, if this were to pass, would you support punishments for people who have abortions?
As mentioned earlier, if I were to load my firearm or pick up a knife out of my pocket and do harm to someone, there is a reason that I should be held accountable for that. Just because there's an individual still in their development stage and they can't cry out and we can't see them perhaps, should not infer that they should not be protected by the laws that we have. So I guess
let me
answer,
let me restate that. Do you support criminal penalties for someone who has an abortion?
if someone has committed a crime, they should be held accountable. If abortion is a crime, they should have some consequences for that action.
And what would you propose those consequences are?
Well, I don't know that I have a set of standards developed personally, but I think there are laws that are currently in statute that might apply.
So, and I'm not an attorney. I know you aren't either. So
Right.
I'm not trying to. I guess
I'm just a dumb farmer.
Well, you've proven to me that you're a pretty bright man,
Oh,
Senator.
thank you.
So would, in terms of criminal penalties, again, I'm trying to get, obviously, we place penalties in a class, felony or misdemeanors. Would you support that this would be equivalent to, let's say, first-degree murder?
Well, if we determine that this, I'm going to continue calling it a person with a unique DNA, is a person, and if we say that current laws cover a murder of a person, then I would probably say yes. But that's to be determined. This has to go to the people, and they have to determine whether or not this is right and just in their minds as the residents of Missouri. And the reason I brought this bill to this point is that I think it is. I would support it. And so if we can convince enough people to support it, then the actions and the penalties would either already be in statute or we would have to prepare
So
something
then
that...
I guess the state would promulgate the rules associated to this?
Well, I think it would
or
be statutory. I think we
do
would...
it separately, statutorily?
If something is not currently in statute that would serve as a penalty for the actions that we're talking about, then we would have to establish those and pass laws to that effect.
Okay. So again, this is, as I mentioned, it was probably the one that caused me the most heartburn because I'm trying to figure out if this were to pass, how the state would enforce it, right? I mentioned earlier, and I don't know if you were here or not, Senator, I know everybody has a lot of things, different hearings to be in today, but I mentioned earlier that I am someone who had a very much desired pregnancy that I lost, unfortunately, right at 12 weeks. And I remember I already had my 12-week appointment scheduled. I mean, I was miscarrying through the night and had my appointment for 9 a.m. the next morning. And I remember when I was able to go into my doctor's office, and they did a scan to see if I had been able to pass everything through the spontaneous abortion that I had had on my bathroom floor. And one of the most awful things that so many people experience, lots of women miscarry every single day. My question has always been, how would somebody know if I induced that abortion or a spontaneous? Because there's nothing in my system that would tell somebody that. And so when I start looking at this, I'm very concerned of what we would do to target women, to criminalize women, to perhaps associate criminal penalties to a Class A felony, to a woman who something happened to her as by no choice of her own. And that's my fear.
I don't know if I can give you a complete answer, but I know today when someone is accused of murder and charged, there is a trial, and hopefully that trial is complete. Now, let me say one thing in your case, and I'm not going to try to cause you to relive that because I don't want that.
But that's why I thought
But
it's important for
since
me to
you
share my
said-
story, because
Yeah, well, since you said nothing was in your system, I think that is an affirmation that you didn't cause this, perhaps. But if you were to be tested positive for mifepristone, for example, that might indicate that it was induced intentionally. And so I think there are ways, and we need to discuss those and make sure that we're not putting the cart before the horse, make sure that we're doing our due diligence and not charging someone unnecessarily. But I believe that there is evidence out there, and especially as has been mentioned before, where someone is being trafficked and they will be forced to have an abortion. Now, in those cases, if someone is forced or coerced, they should not be held accountable for someone who is committing that crime or forcing them to commit that crime. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm going to end I know we'll have plenty of time to talk about this
You
on the
bet.
floor, so I want to respect people's time. But let me just end by saying the following. I mean, I can't begin to fathom already the pain and agony I was going through. I had a child at home. I much wanted this pregnancy to go in there and then to be forced or subjugated to testing or further exams. At that point, my doctors wanted to make sure that I was going to be safe and healthy and that I wouldn't develop sepsis, right? That was the concern. Not that whether I had tried to induce that abortion myself.
I would say in your
Senator,
case, Senator, that you would not be held accountable for spontaneous abortion.
But what is...
And I would call that a miscarriage. I wouldn't call it an abortion necessarily,
Okay.
just a miscarriage.
I'm going to respect the time of everybody else, and we'll finish
Okay.
this later.
Thank you. I would love to talk to you about it more. Thank you.
Any other questions for the senator? Seeing none, thank you. First witness to testify in favor. We have 20 minutes, so we are going to time this to 1 minute probably each. We'll do rotate for and against at 1 minute.
Good afternoon. I'm Timothy Faber, and I come before you today urging you to vote do pass on this wonderful piece of legislation. I say wonderful because if passed by the legislature and the voters, this will literally save the lives of thousands of Missourians. But it's also tragic in that we need to even be having this conversation. I never cease to be stricken by how many people out there think that it is okay to deprive others of personhood and even life itself. In America's past, there were those who were considered humans of a particular race to be less than a person. They were slaves, owned as property of others, and they could be killed by their masters, and no one thought anything of it. Often they were not killed by their masters because of the economic impact that would have had. There was a financial incentive to keep them alive and perhaps sell them off to someone else. But they were not valued as persons, and their life was not considered an inalienable right. Fortunately, though there is still some work to do,
Sir,
we have
I'm sorry, we have we have 15 minutes left, so we've got to.
Okay.
Can you leave your testimony and then we'll disperse that amongst the committee members and
Okay.
just leave your witness form?
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll have two up, one for and one against if you're against, and we'll just keep this rolling. We just want to respect everyone's time who's come up to testify and give them an opportunity. So if
And-
there's anybody here to testify against, is there anybody in the room here to testify against? Okay, so just do two. Yep, come on up. All right, sir, we'll begin with you. Make sure you fill out witness forms and leave them, if you haven't, for the SJR8.
just very, very quickly for the record, I know we had some healthcare providers that were here earlier, but because of going late, they had to leave. So
If they could just submit
again,
their-
testimony to the committee, or is that fine?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Make sure that Blake gets that sent out to you. Okay, thank you. Proceed when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Zevis Mason, Director of the Coalition for Jewish Values of Missouri. I'd like to share with you that according to Jewish tradition and law, most authorities consider feticide to be an act of murder. And even the most permissive opinions of our scholars reserve abortion for extreme situations that no mother should ever experience. However, the tragic fact remains that in the United States, nearly 95% of abortions are performed on healthy children being carried by healthy mothers. So while in 2023 there were 16,000 murders, there were approximately 1 million abortions that took place. So if we assume that 5, or to be generous, 10% of those were because of extreme circumstances, that would mean then that there were 900,000 abortions that would be constituted as acts of murder. Suggest not to be misled by those who misrepresent biblical passages in order to promote the idea that abortion should be simply represented as a choice. I appreciate Senator Moon's inclusion of the term unborn child rather than the euphemisms that are used to mask the issue, such as fetal tissue and fetus and reproductive health. Our bodies belong to God, according to the Bible and according to our tradition and our understanding. They don't belong to us. And similarly, no one should say that their children are theirs. We are stewards of our children, both stewards of our children that are born, as well as stewards of our children that are unborn. And my final thought is that a soon-to-be mother, according to our tradition, should realize that she's carrying the greatest gift that God could grant to her. And like a holy ark that contains the Torah scroll, the holiest object in our tradition, a pregnant woman is carrying a holy object, and she's considered to be a holy ark carrying that as well. So may your decision, esteemed committee, to support life for our unborn children bless you and bless your families with untold true joy, abundance, and God's blessings.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, in favor?
Rebecca Kiesling, and supporting this bill.
Can you make sure the mic is on and it's green, just that way that everyone can hear?
I, as an attorney, again, I've litigated cases involving these issues, and Roe v. Wade. You may recall that the justices discussed this issue of personhood and said that if it could be shown that the unborn are persons, then they would be entitled to protection under the 14th Amendment. And so there was a whole analysis of personhood, and in footnote 54 of the U.S. Supreme Court's opinion, they pointed out that Texas's exceptions and exemptions, it wasn't a rape exception, but they did have some exceptions and exemptions, undermine the state's whole argument for personhood. And so the beauty of personhood is that there are no exceptions when you recognize that they're persons. As an attorney with cases I handled, I did a search of our state law and found that in the courts, in the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court, if it was a wanted child, didn't matter gestationally, whether it was first trimester, last trimester. If the child was wanted, they used the term, unborn child. If the child was unwanted, depending on, what the subject matter was of the case, all of a sudden they used the term fetus. And I think it's really important to have uniformity and codify and recognize just simply person.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Next in favor?
Hi, my name is Emma Mainhart, and I'm speaking in favor of SJR8. Thank you, Madam Chairperson and committee, for allowing me to speak today. So my mom was due to give birth to me in early August of 2000, but on March 20th, I was born. At 23 weeks, I was born 1 pound, 5 ounces. At 17 weeks early, experts and doctors said that I would have no chance of survival. My survival rate was considered a 0% chance, but by the grace of God, I had the opportunity to stand before you today and to speak in favor of this bill. So a question I have for the committee. What was I at 23 weeks? Was I a person, or was I only a person because I was outside the womb instead of inside my mother? Did my location determine my personhood? As God revealed to us We have personhood at the moment of fertilization, despite what Harpy bills or what Amendment 3 says. I had personhood before my due date and despite of my delivery date. Every person from the moment of fertilization has personhood. My question still stands. What does the committee believe that I had personhood? My life is a testimony of my personhood and why you should vote in favor for SJR8. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very succinct. You should be applauded. So thank you for your testimony. Go ahead.
Hi. Madam Chairperson and members of the committee, I'm Dr. Wes Scroggins. I'm here to testify in favor of support for SJR8. I won't because of time, reiterate everything that's already been said, but Scripture, Psalm 139, 13 through 16, God recognizes in Scripture the personhood of the preborn. David talks about God, seeing his unformed substance and ordaining his days before he was ever born. David says, my days, God had a plan for me before there was yet one of them. And so God, recognizes the personhood of the preborn. Can we do any less, especially those that claim to be his followers? The preborn stage is just, as it's already been referenced here, is just simply a developmental stage, right? And we have many different attributes as human beings that go through developmental stages. Some of you committee members are probably aware of Jean Piaget's cognitive development stages, right? And so, for example, when a child, a small child, 3, 4, 5 years old, is in what he called the pre-operational stage, and doesn't have that ability to think abstractly, we don't consider them to be any less person, right?
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next in favor?
All right, I'm in favor of the bill. I'm a pastor in Fenton, Missouri. I'll be really brief, throwing out a lot of what I had to say. I want to briefly. Some of you, I believe, are Christians. I don't know how many of you claim to be Christians. Whether Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, or Protestant, it is a core Christian doctrine that God became flesh in the incarnation. That began at conception when the Holy Spirit overshadowed Mary. Mary was called in 431 at the Council of Ephesus the God-bearer. She bore in her womb fully God and fully man in the womb. So personhood is a Christian doctrine, and if you're a Christian, I appeal to your Christian conscience. I'd also like to say that Pontius Pilate knew the right thing to do, but because of political expediency, he bowed to the vote of the people. And I just want to make an appeal to you to stand up for personhood. Don't allow the shedding of innocent blood relies upon redefining a person as a clump of cells. And I want to appeal to you as Christians, defend the life of the preborn child. It is a person worthy of equal protection under the law.
Thank you for your testimony. Make sure you fill out witness forms and leave them on the table. Appreciate that. Go ahead. Oh, you have a question? Sorry.
Excuse me, sir.
She has a question for you.
I just have a just quick question. Do you think every Missourian should have to abide by your religious beliefs?
I believe that rights come from God. If rights come from you, then you can take them away. And our founding document, Declaration of Independence, says that rights come from God, and therefore they're inalienable.
So the
If
answer is
rights
yes.
come from rights come from the vote of the people or from you, then essentially you're God, and you take and give rights as you see fit. So I believe that our country was founded upon values that are based on God's law, and you shall not murder is enshrined in our political philosophy. And yes, everyone should be bound by it. There shouldn't be a separate set of laws for people who think rape is okay or murder's okay. Otherwise, you have science and experts unfettered for morality. You end up with Nazis testing on twins to see medical experiments done. You've got to have a standard of morality.
Thank you for answering the question. Appreciate it. Next in favor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, for the record, Susan Klein, representing Missouri Right to Life, here to go on record in support of SJR8. I want to thank Senator Moon for bringing it forward. I think it's absolutely time for Missouri to recognize that the unborn child in the womb is has a unique set of DNA separate from their mother and deserve the right to live. And we support this bill wholeheartedly.
Thank you. How many more people do we have testifying in favor? Okay, go ahead. All right, thank you so much.
Hi, thank you, Chairman, and the committee.
My name is Kanoa Benz from Church of the Word, and I'm speaking in favor of the SJR8. And the question that keeps coming up when it talks about creators and God is because while we hold to a principle of separation of church and state that is not found in any one of our founding documents, but it's something that we hold on to, what we have to remember is while we can agree to that separation of church and state, what we cannot deny is the separation of God and state. Because at the end of the day, if we want to sing the correct words of the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, we must say one nation under God, not above, under. And so then the question must be asked, what has God said? And so God is clear, what everybody else has testified, that the children are all children are made in the image of God at the moment of fertilization, despite how they were conceived. And so therefore they should have equal rights of protection and considered personhood, just as Jesus Christ was considered a person, acknowledged as a person in the womb. So I just wanted to remind everybody of what we say, and I too would like to hear Emma Manhart's question answered about when was she a person. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have
Yes, ma'am.
just yes or no to 3 questions for the sake of time, and then we've got some other people. Do you support the punishment for people who have had abortions? Do you
Like
support
passed, are you talking about?
Just now,
Or
moving
if
forward.
a bill was passed and then they broke the law. Is that what you're asking? Just to clarify.
Just in general, like
So I do not believe that people in the past before a law has been put in place. So no, we do not believe in retroactive punishment.
Okay.
So not people in the past. But if somebody breaks a law, I believe that if the
So currently, since abortion's legal in the state of Missouri, do you believe they need to be punished?
I believe that we should pass a law to provide equal rights for all human beings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, we'll proceed when you're ready.
All right. My name's Mark. I pastor a small church in Southwest Missouri. Just a few things.
Can you just check your mic for me, please? Is it green? The light is green?
It's green.
Okay, awesome. There you go.
Don't take
That's
those
better.
3 seconds from me. All right. Believe it or not, you are theologians. Whether you are on the left or my left or your right, you are, because a theologian is basically theo, God, logian study. So you are a theologian because you believe something about God. You are also a lawmaker, right? Lawmakers do what? They enforce or they create laws based upon morality. Every one of you. Where does morality come from? That's the bottom line. And are you going to stick with it? If morals are subjective and not absolute, you can make whatever laws you want. But if there is a standard, you have to abide by that standard. Is there only one true standard? There has to be. Otherwise, it would be subjective, and that would be the Word of God. Now, can you make exceptions based upon political expediency? That would be something that you'd have to look into the Scriptures, I believe, and say, hey, yes or no. Does God allow exceptions to His law? I would say no. One would be in Proverbs 17, verse 15, to acquit the guilty and condemn the innocent is an abomination in my sight. You can't do it. If you are not being true to the Scriptures as a believing Christian.
Thank you for your testimony. Make sure you fill out the witness form. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Committee, Chairwoman, thank you. My name is Adrian Cookson. I am from Rockport, not Rockport, sorry, Old Church. Church of the Word, a little nervous here, sorry. Church of the Word in Fenton, Missouri. I am also part of the podcast of Reform Labs. We spoke on the matter of what does God say. So we see in Exodus 21, 22 through 25 that God brings forth equal rights and equal protection for the child in the womb. God has no arbitrary qualifiers for personhood for the child in the womb, for they are made in the image of God. We see in Psalm 139, 13 through 14, the child is formed by God in the mother's womb. Luke 1, 39 through 43, John in the womb recognized Jesus in the womb as Messiah. We see in Genesis 1, 27, God made people in his image, both male and female. Since the child in the womb is described as a person throughout Scripture, and people are made in the image of God, they have inherent value and inherent worth. Thank you for your time.
That was great. Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony. With that, I just want to say this was a healthy, passionate discussion. I want to give a shout out to our committee members for their vulnerability in this discussion, and as well as many of you who testified. as we move forward, these are difficult discussions to have, and they should be public. So the more dialogue and the discussion that we have, the healthier I think our society it is. So again, giving kudos to my committee members. Thank you so much. And yes, please. You have 1 minute.
I have 1 minute. Okay. I just want to thank the pastors that came out. Thank you for being involved. If you don't know, I'm a pastor too. At least that's what they call me. So thank you for being engaged in the political process. And I just want to make one statement that I haven't heard, I was waiting to hear, and I think we ought to just consider it. We have laws that if a pregnant woman is murdered, then it's dual murder. So are we already saying that there's a person in the womb? Thank you very much. For everybody that was here, thank you so much.
Okay, any other comments? All right, I move that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor? Aye. All opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.